as we start our live streaming. Right. And welcome to everyone. We have our expert webinar in trends in AI and ML, uh, artificial intelligence and machine learning, data science and analytics for 2022. And our presenter today is Ronald van Loon, the CEO of Intelligent World, an advisory board member here at Simplilearn and one of the world's leading recognized experts and speakers on the topics of data science and AI ML. So before we get to Ronald, I'd like to remind everyone how to use the controls for WebEx. Please do put your questions for Ronald into the Q&A box. You can put those in at any time. We will queue those up for him, and I'll be asking those on your behalf at the Q&A portion of the webinar. You can put messages into chat, uh, but if there are questions for Ronald, please put them in the Q&A. And that, I'd like to start with a poll of the audience, where we're going to ask what skills you would, or what's your current, gotta change this poll, I'm sorry. Apologize. I want to make sure the poll I give you is the one that matches your, what's on the screen here, so. Apologize for this delay. And poll is not up. And again, I apologize for the delay, but here's the poll. If you're watching on live stream, you can put the answers into the comments, but if you are on the WebEx session, you should see the widget right now. We asked the second question, how you're feeling today. Been asking that during the entire pandemic to make sure that people are handling lockdowns and restrictions. Hoping you're all doing well today. And I'm going to go ahead and close the poll. Share the results with you. So we have a number of students here today and a number of people in other positions besides the practicing data science engineers and managers. Also good to see that almost everybody is either doing well or doing okay. We hope we'll help improve the outlook of the people in the third category there. So with that little bump in the road, I'd like to introduce Ronald van Loon, again, one of the foremost thought leaders in data science and digital transformation. And we'll go right ahead into the recap of 2021 trends. We've had the state of AI investments with companies, 76% of organizations barely breaking even on their AI investments. Ronald, do you want to comment on that?
Yeah, it's amazing. I think it's great that we can have time now to look back to 2021, which was on one hand a difficult year from technology perspective. I think quite an exciting year, and from let's say it's a foundation again for all the trends that we see in 2022. And indeed, if we look to some statistics, where we see where many organizations start working with AI and invest in it, but unfortunately we see, and that maybe surprised many people, is that 76% of the organizations, they barely break even on their AI investment. That looks, let's say, as some kind of negative news, but I think there's also a lot of positive news about this, is that companies are embracing and increasing their investments in AI, including AI for new use cases as well. And to maximize those type of AI investments, we see that businesses are turning to new talent to build top performing algorithms. And I think that's very good for you. And I saw many students. So everybody who is working in the AI domain, in the data science domain, I think the outlook is fantastic. And what we see to organizations as well is that they are also evaluating the cost of AI. And then you can think about the cost for example, for computing power, which is much more available all the time. And now we get even high performance computing HPC available in the cloud, which makes the amount of possibilities really exponential. And we see that many organizations are choosing an operating model that drives consistencies in the data approach. So data analytics, AI is incorporated in every organization. And this leads us to another trend that we have heard a lot about in the past year, I think, is MLOps, machine learning operations. MLOps is some kind of roadmap or a framework that helps businesses to implement best practices and helps them to implement technologies for enabling AI. And what we see as well is that MLOps helps organizations to speed up AI application development and scale AI across the business. And the scaling is very difficult, and it really a change in the trend. Many organizations had the last, let's say, 3 years, quite some challenges in scaling AI across the business. And now you see that more and more organizations have a right foundation for this. And what we see with this scaling is that this includes scaling from the tools, it includes the scaling from the platforms, but also from the services. And it helps them to standardize and to automate their processes that bring AI teams clarity and consistency in their roles and in their responsibility. And I think that's where MLOps really helps. And it incorporates also the data management, the development, the workflow deployments, model deployment, and model monitoring as well. So we see that MLOps is really helping organizations to increase the productivity with the data teams, with the machine learning teams, so that they can go live with their AI solutions as quickly as possible and really have the possibility and the option to scale AI fast. And I think that's key in making AI successful. So the last recap for 2021 I want to discuss is the responsible AI. And the more businesses implement AI solutions into their organizations, the more integral it becomes in ensuring that outcomes are positive. Because AI consequences can be very negative if AI ethical considerations are left unchecked. So AI ethics is really one of the most important considerations for organizations. But for management, it's quite some kind of vague area where it's very hard to control. And for the machine learning engineers, I think it's crucial to have this in mind, but it's easy to forget or not to put attention on, but it's really, really critical. And the reason is that bias can lead to damage to a business reputation, or loss in revenue, but I think this damage in reputation is really critical, and it can lead to productivity stalls. So organizations are trying to bring more levels of transparency and equality into their AI systems and into their model. So I'm talking about responsible AI as our final 2021 trend, because I think ethical AI is always going to be one of the most important aspects and foundations for AI this year, also next year, and probably the coming years. And it's really the foundation whether AI is going to be for the good in the coming years and will be accepted as a technology that drives basically everything where data is used. So this sums up most of the popular 2021 trends. But let's start talking about 2022. We have, let's see. Okay, now it works. We have some really interesting 2022 trends. I think to discuss. 2022 will be another year that's further impacted by data analytics and AI technologies, building on the foundation that's been created. And what we see is that the world has shifted to remote work and hybrid remote work scenarios. And businesses are still trying to navigate these new technologies environments as they continuously aspire to be ahead of this digital transformation goals that they have. Digital transformation has really speed up the last year and the last, let's say, 18, 24 months already. And what we see is that supply chains are in a state of disruption. We've seen it all over the world that supply chains have been affected, whether it was by COVID or whether it was by a ship in the Suez Canal. And we see that organizations are looking to virtualize and to modernize the supply chain environments and their processes and overcome the legacy systems that have been in place, sometimes even more than 30 years. So organizations also have to think about the impact of their business on the environment and how they create sustainability standards for the products and for the services, and also create this in their operation. So organizations are also driven by regulations, whether that's from the environment, such as we have this Paris Accord, maybe you have heard about this, where we talk about the sustainability goals that we have, or other data and AI regulations. And I think it's needless to say that 2022 is going to be another year where businesses have a lot on their plate to consider, and especially from this regulation part as well. And they have to figure out how to overcome disruption from all different kind of angles, where different organizations from different industries start to compete with each other and really determine the future impact of their decision that they make every day. And whether that be from implementing new technologies or partnering with vendors, partnering in ecosystems, and of course hiring and upskilling talent, which is really crucial, but also shifting their cultural mindset and the way that they work. And this will impact their business 6 months from now, but also, let's say a half a year from now, 5 years from now. Every decision they take now has an important impact, and businesses need to look to the future now more than ever with all these different changes and fast moving environment, and ensure that the changes that they make today will set them up for a future of success and ensure their business continuity. So that's why I think we're here today, and we're here to talk about the future of business and what they need to do to remain relevant, to remain competitive. And we're going to talk about these 4 different topics today, which I see as the 4 main trends, which is cybersecurity, which is decision intelligence, which is generative artificial intelligence. And as the last topic I would like to discuss is the data fabric. And I'm really excited to being here. And thanks again, Simplilearn and Stuart for inviting me. And let's dive into the discussion. But this is, I think, where we're going to talk about, Stuart.
Great. And so the key question I think everybody's thinking of is, of all the trends, what's the most important in 2022, in your opinion, and why is that?
Yeah, it's a trend. I think it's already the most important right now, and especially I think the last 6 months we have seen cybersecurity becoming top of mind, with on one hand tons of breaches, but also hacks, and let's say hacks where the hackers ask for ransomware, or so it's really top of mind, and it can really change your business in a fraction of a day. So that's why cybersecurity is really top of mind for any organization today, whether you are a business around the corner, small, medium enterprise, or whether you are a large organization and operating globally. And what we see is that people are working from home, and they're accessing applications and workloads from anywhere on their preferred device. And home networks, yeah, you can imagine they're not as secure as the business networks. And also what we see is that business data is in the cloud and is less often stored on premise. And to top of it all, I think organizations partner with vendors and collaborate with third-party affiliates, and they need to share more data, need to share more systems, which makes it a bigger challenge to be secure. And I did some research. There's the famous consultancy firm, which is McKinsey, and they mentioned there are 127 new devices connected to the internet every second. And currently we are close to the 30 billion connected devices to the internet. And you can see, I think, where I'm going with this. There's a very generalized scenario, but this point is that there's a lot going on in the business world that can create potential risk to cybersecurity, because every connection is basically a potential risk. So we have globally 30 potential connections and potential risks which are daily operating with the internet. And what we see as well is that businesses digitize. So if they digitize, there's a corresponding need to protect the customers, to protect your employees, to protect your organization. So therefore, cybersecurity requires, on one hand, a cultural shift, but also dedication of the board, of the C-level, of the employees, and everybody needs to work together to protect, to detect, and to respond to incidents. And to give you a little bit an idea what the cost is of cybercrime, that's 10.5 trillion by 2025. So that's a gigantic amount, basically, that we see. And that's something that we need to keep in mind, and that's why it is so important. So businesses have to create cybersecurity and a risk response strategy that helps them to be agile and adaptable in the face of this evolving threat landscape. And what we see is not only the businesses change, but also, let's say, the hackers change, and they evolve quickly as well. And especially during the pandemic, they start focusing doing more online, as they are more limited offline, I believe. And this includes, if you look to this evolving landscape, this includes going over your infrastructure. This includes identifying technologies that can create this type of vulnerability. And you can imagine, if there's only one vulnerability, you have a risk. And they need to outline a proper response plan for this. So it's important to detail your governance, to dedicate and define responsibility, so that people have a plan to follow, such as rules, such as processes and roles that are delegated to ensure their privacy and ensure their compliance. So this gives a more consistent view of data, and I think also ensures better data quality, and it helps also create a single source of truth while defining methodologies that can be applied to data management best practices. So this brings us to, I think, our first major point of cybersecurity trend discussion, and that's creating a zero trust framework or a zero trust architecture. And probably you have heard about it the last, let's say, 6 to 8 months, where key organizations launched this concept, where they where identity and where devices and network and applications need to be proven that they are trusted. So every connection in the full stack is a risk, and where they say every device, every identity, every network is basically a risk. And this assumes that everything related to the network is potentially hostile, or it can be potentially harmful. And this requires, on one hand, constant verification and authentication. It requires multi-factor authentication. It requires, for example, network segmentation and conditional application access to protect all the different layers. So ongoing device management, that includes how devices are accessing your corporate networks. So if we talk about the zero trust security, it ensures that resources and data are accessible and ensure that interaction between the networks, between the applications, meet these conditional requirements to be trusted. And oftentimes in case of cybersecurity breaches, it's personal identifiable customer data that's impacted. And this causes reputational damage. You can imagine if your data is shared, you shared it with the company and they lost it in a breach, you are not feeling comfortable, and this really damages brands, yes, often globally if they have a global reputation. So just a small issue can have a big impact on their reputation. And on the other hand, of course, it exposes the consumer to all kind of unnecessary risk if they don't have it in order. So what's very interesting is that as analytics and AI advances across the business, we see as well that cyber criminals also are using AI and analytics just like the businesses do. So it's always a cat and mouse play. And they basically illegally access customer data on the dark web, for example, or via data breaches, or they do work on social engineering scam or phishing scam or other sophisticated and difficult to detect schemes that they use. And this is a strong driver of cybersecurity technology adoption and the motivator for business to have their act together. So companies need to leverage intelligent technologies to combat the cyber criminals that work with intelligent technologies as well. As I said, it's a cat and mouse play all the time before they can compromise an organization's customers' data, for example. And this is an urgent priority now. You need to protect your customer and you need to protect your organization against it. And businesses want to protect their customer privacy, so they can create a zero trust framework to help them understand the data landscape as well as the data lineage, to secure the data sharing, for example, and the use, and to take care for the access management, to take care for the activity monitoring, but also to automate responses like consent management or breach response for their privacy. So if organizations are to succeed with this zero trust type of approach, they have to be prepared to respond back to the customers who are requesting information about their personal information and tell them how they are using it and how organizations are storing their personal information. Next to that, is also important for businesses to make frequent assessment about their data and how it's classified. For example, who accesses that data, who owns the data, or where knowing that data is being stored. All these aspects are crucial, that they are in control of the different types of stages of their data. And zero trust, if they have it in place, this approach, it has a lot of benefits. It reduces the friction and it works basically from anywhere, as we now work from anywhere, from any device. So think about the way we started this conversation talking about employees needing to access to their work on any device, on any location. Probably you work from home as well right now, and you use your own devices, whether it's your tablet, your desktop, your mobile, or your smartphone. You use devices which you normally were not allowed to use, probably at your office. Also, what's important is the authentication protocols that help employees to sign in, and they help them to verify who they are, and they can start their work immediately, so it doesn't take 10 minutes to log in. So employees can easily access the systems and the tools they need when they are at home, or when they even are back in the office. And of course, this zero trust is very secure, it's very safe, and it helps you to reduce and to narrow the exposure to threats. And I think it emphasizes a more proactive approach to cybersecurity than rather a reactive approach. And it's a cat and mouse play. You have to be the cat, and you have to stay in advance of the cyber criminals. But there's also, I think, a lot of challenges when it comes to cybersecurity that businesses are facing. You can think about security professionals that have too many tasks to do. If you are one of the security professionals, I saw there's many students in the webcast today. If you want to be this cybersecurity professional, you will notice that they put a lot on your plate. There's tons of data, and often these teams, they're not always well equipped because the developments are going so fast and it's not so easy to stay up to date. And AI is having a major impact on cybersecurity and on the people, as it supports. It supports in ensuring your accuracy in detection. It supports in speeding up the investigation processes and automating the response if there's a breach or a hack. So AI can respond often much faster than people can. So AI is really helping proactively to respond to threats, providing authentication. So just an example is this: providing an authentication based on behavioral biometrics for individual users, where AI is really helping. So I consider cybersecurity as the most important trend of 2022, because businesses are continuously amidst this digital transformation initiatives, and they need to introduce and implement new technologies, and every new technology is a challenge to stay safe and to approach this from a zero trust perspective. So we see new things like the rise of cloud, of course, cloud capabilities, which expose organizations to new potential risk. On the other hand, many activities are managed in the cloud better than on premise, and it reduces the required amount of skills that companies are needed. But also we see customer behavior changing, which is a challenge, and they are online more than ever before. They're making a lot of digital purchases and digital activities, and interacting with financial institutions for your banking purposes, and mobile banking, of course. And every access needs to be secure. We also discussed how employees' behavior are changing too, as this work from home. And if we stack up all these different challenges, I think you can imagine what kind of challenge it is for organizations. So a digital world filled with new technologies and data requires better security, more encryption, better skills probably from the teams, and more support from AI, improved access control. And this results in a lot of different job opportunities and different career roles in cybersecurity. So if you like it, it's definitely an area to look at it. And especially the many students that are on the webcast today, have a look in cybersecurity, defined for yourself which industries you like, which aspects of cybersecurity you like, and based upon this, start your career and move forward. And it's definitely a career where you can make great money, where you can be challenged a lot from all the new developments, and you can think from being a cybersecurity architect or an engineer or a technician or an administrator, or security analyst. So there's many different type of tasks, and for every different skill, there's a different type of role. So I think, Stuart, this is a great area for the students, for the people that are already in the business, or already a data scientist or a data analyst, to watch it and to develop themselves in it. So my first trend.
Yeah, thank you, Ronald. And as you mentioned cat and mouse, I was thinking of a different metaphor of the snake and the mongoose. The question is whether you're going to be the snake and attack, or the mongoose who not only fends off the attack but counterattacks and kills the snake. So
I
that's
live in the Netherlands. Luckily, we don't have snakes. We have mouses and we have cats. So maybe it's my reference.
Right. So when we look at one of the things you mentioned as a trend, decision intelligence, and that's an area that I worked for a company in that area a few years back. So it's a very interesting topic to me. But can you tell the audience more about decision intelligence, what it is, and how that will change the world of work and improve
Yeah, good.
outlook for
Let me
business?
first try to clarify what it is, because I can imagine that it's not clear for everybody, especially if you haven't worked in that domain. It's basically evaluating possible outcomes and choices that a person can make. And on the other hand, you gather all the information that's available in order to make the best decision that you can. And decision intelligence, I think it's practice. So businesses now more than ever if they look to the future, they're going to be using decision intelligence as a way to study decision making and garnering feedback in a way that helps them to improve the decision outcomes and ultimately enhance their competitive edge, their competitive advantage, and the better decisions they can make with the help of data, with the help of AI, the better they can compete. And decision intelligence helps better understand the impact of their decision and how it affects the different aspects of a business. And you can imagine that every decision you make, whether it's C-level executive level or whether it's at the practitioner level, every decision you make has an impact on the future. And data is a very important part of this process. And decision intelligence provides that connection and that intersection between the data, between the decision making, between the business intelligence and the management. And AI is therefore an important part of decision intelligence as it's being used to make predictions about future outcomes. So identify potential opportunities, but also identify potential risk and help the decision maker to evaluate the best strategies to take. It is, however, currently very difficult to get deep levels of context from data and AI models and really building and understanding the connections between your systems and performing detailed and complex analysis to make decisions fast. There's so many aspects that you need to take into account. And this is essentially why decision intelligence is an integral part for the future of business, for the future of work. And decision intelligence helps you to understand these underlying complexities of machine learning models and different inputs so that organizations and business decision makers can predict the best possible outcome, because that's what it's all about. And to give an example, organizations might want to create new market opportunities in retail, and that help them to adjust their inventory levels and predict the consumer demand at the certain times of the year. And if we look back, let's say, to the last year from the pandemic, the consumer demand shifted from one day to the other, from, let's say, physical retail to online. Then retail could open again, back to physical retail, partly online. So you can imagine it's very hard for AI, for the data, to look back and to use this data in their decision making, because there's no history of reference anymore. Another example might be, for example, where an insurance organizations who need to identify risk by demographics such as location. So if you live in a big city or let's say a bad area where there's a lot of criminality, you can have a different insurance than you live in a very safe area, maybe in the countryside where less is happening. It's not, let's say, that's always that the case, but just as an example, so that they can create products and services which are very targeted to specific audiences that fit within the segments and which are calculated based upon this decision intelligence. So decision intelligence is a very outcomes focused practice. It's revolving around how business decisions are going to impact business goals and how they're going to impact business use cases. So it can be applied for many different industry use cases, as you can imagine. And businesses need to make complex decisions, and they often need to make them as quick as possible. And decision intelligence helps them to reduce the time it takes to developing and to deploying this complex business logic. At the same time, if we look to business leaders and decision makers, they need to resolve these discrepancies in decision making best practices and all the different type of components and circumstances surrounding the nature of this decision. And you can imagine how complex every decision it is, because it has an impact on every aspect of your business, every aspect what your client does. So it's a very complex area for let's say in the domain of AI. And what we see is that successful organizations, they are very AI and analytics driven. The biggest examples, of course, are the Teslas and the Amazons of this world. And we see as well that many organizations now focus with their work environment to a hybrid or even a digital type of workforce. So organizations are exploring this ongoing digital transformation. They want to learn how to meet this evolving consumer needs and this consumer expectations and the customer expectations. And based upon this, they need to react. They need to be ready to be resilient in any type of disruption that can occur. And we've seen different disruptions right now. COVID is there, COVID is back, and it's going up and down, and other things happening where they need to respond to. And if we look to AI and analytics landscapes in this domain, they are complex. So it is connecting business needs with the AI and the machine learning models, which is the complex part. And decision intelligence helps to strengthen that connection between the decision-making process and the AI, such that by building this trusted and accurate AI outcomes or eliminating the bias in the human decision-making. And yeah, as I said, you can imagine this is a complex area, but from the other hand, it's an interesting area to be in. If you're a student now as well, look at this area next to the cybersecurity, because this is an area that's going to have a big impact, and there's going to be a huge need from skill sets in the coming time. And if we look to organizations, yeah, it's the entire organization from board level executives, management, IT, they're all becoming connected and involved in supporting business decision makings in goals and objectives. They're doing this already, but they get now in contact with this automated decision intelligence, and that includes working together to optimize the potential of their data and AI. If we look to the future of work, this all revolves around the business and the technology teams, which are uniting more and more. It's less department driven, it's more outcome driven, and supporting each other to drive these business goals and to meet your company objective. And what we see is that decision intelligence is the link together to these disparate teams and their data, and help the analytics professionals better apply data science practices into the context of the business problem. Decision intelligence is not just going to improve the future of work, but it will become a necessity and everyday practice as organizations seek to drive this competitive advantage and growth and using data and AI. And yeah, once again, if you looking to develop your skill sets in this domain, in the new trends, this is one of the trends you can look at. And yeah, for sure, there is a future for the skills that you're going to get. So this is my second important trend, and I think it's really helping the people over here.
Yeah, if you take a look at the next slide, you probably what we're looking for. The third trend then is something you're calling generative artificial intelligence, which is kind of a new term for me, but I've seen what your explanation is. So I'm looking forward to you sharing that with the audience, and especially as the question puts it, how can you use that in a practical sense? How does it apply in different industries as a new way of applying artificial intelligence to business problems?
Yeah, let me maybe explain, because you have seen what it is, but not everybody has seen it. So if we look to generative AI, it creates new data instances from the data that already been trained from available audio, from available text, from images and videos. And basically, generative AI takes audio, text, and images and videos and creates new content from it. So everyone has probably already seen how AI generated images of people who don't exist. So now the metaverse has been let's say announced. If we look to these type of images, the images look real, but the people are not real. Or you can also think about how numbers look like, if they are like handwritten by person, but they are not handwritten. So these are common examples of generative AI. So generative AI is being, sorry.
I was going to just mention another example of this, and it relates to a question that came in about the role of AI in the race for the coronavirus vaccine. There's one of the problems with machine learning is you need large data sets to train machine learning systems. And sometimes, for example, especially in healthcare, the real data, the real world data is restricted because of privacy concerns. So it's important to have a way to generate data that behaves as if it was real world data, but is actually artificially generated, so that there's no actual privacy being violated. And that's an
Exactly, and a
example
very
of
nice example.
generative
Very nice
AI.
example. Yeah, so we see as well indeed that during the pandemic for the COVID-19 treatment, this has been used as well, and I really like the example. I think another term for it is synthetic data, which we will hear in the coming time more and more. So we see that this type of technology helped to aid research with this COVID, as it helped to generate more data to support its existing algorithms. And I like the example of privacy or privacy sensitive type of data. And this way you can indeed generate data that is synthetic and therefore not breaching any type of privacy regulation. And indeed, healthcare can benefit a lot from this generative AI in other applications as well, from early detection and identifying certain illnesses. And indeed, again, by using synthetic data, not privacy sensitive type of data, but also, for example, for analyzing different X-ray images to better visualize patient ailment, for example. So generative AI is also not only used in healthcare, it's also used, for example, in manufacturing for rapid prototyping to build and to model potential new products, which improves the basically the existing prototyping and speeds up the existing prototyping or versions to fine tune existing prototyping. And I've seen, let's say, examples where they prototyped a full factory and they run the full factory already before it's even built, and then they start producing and let's say creating the products that are built in the factory. So this is the level where you can think about, and a nice example was BMW that runs the factories like this. And you can imagine that if you can fully operate your factory before it's built in a digital environment and you can test it already, this speeds up much faster than doing this in practice. We also see, let's say, many other industries that are going to be effective by this generative AI, such as media and entertainment, the automotive example, which I had, but also aerospace and energy. And it will disrupt also the software and the coding domain. And I think this is very important for our audience because it can automate up to 70% of the work done by programmers. And if you think now about your career, and you are a programmer, think about, okay, what if 70% of my tasks are going to be automated? So how do you need to develop your skill set and your experience so it's helpful for the organizations that are going to automate the coding? And generative AI will be playing a big part in this. It is fairly new technology, as you mentioned as well, Stuart. But as organizations mature in AI and further explore and adopt new AI solutions, generative AI is going to be one of the dynamic technologies that organizations implement for various use cases. And one important trend, what we see now, as mentioned in the beginning, we have high performance computing. Initially, it was only there for research institutions, maybe for large financial institutions or for governments that had the power to thousands of cores which they could scale at once. Now HPC computing becomes available in the cloud, which means that if there's much more compute power, they can run thousandfold faster the algorithms, and which means that these type of developments goes very fast. And yeah, we've seen the announcements, for example, from NVIDIA in the metaverse as well. The foundation is getting there, and if you have a road, then people start driving over the road and start driving faster. Now there is a new type of, let's say, compute power level, which means that the number of applications will exponentially grow the coming time. And this generative AI is an important part of this. There's also challenges when it comes, I think, to generative AI, and they require, what we mentioned already, a lot of training data. To give some examples, If you have a company who would obtain a very large and comprehensive data set, which are already labeled, and this labeling is very difficult for a business context when building these various use cases, not just from a standpoint of obtaining the large data set, but also from responding to all the small variations that could lead to having to acquire more data sets. And the synthetic data over here is a very important part for the solution. So you can think about an autonomous vehicle that needs to navigate a certain area where weather conditions change constantly. And this would require data sets for all the different types of weather conditions, which makes it impossible. So essentially another challenge is data labeling, because the underlying data needs to be labeled by people initially, and generative AI can also be very hardware dependent and require a lot of computing power, but that part is solved basically now more and more because it's available in the cloud. The other part, which is a challenge, Stuart, which you were mentioning as well, is the privacy concerns. So if you use privacy sensitive data, and for that, we discussed the healthcare, and on the other hand, there are solutions for this as well. So if we look to how it can work, it uses a generative, it uses basically the GAN networks, which is a type of machine learning model that generates the samples from real world distributions. So it's a semi-supervised learning technique where two networks compete against each other, and it's a generator and a discriminator, and these enhance their understanding of this something, of the area which they discover. And the generator learns to produce realistic data, where the discriminator detects the fake data from the real data, and this ultimately reduces the need for data to be labeled by humans, because the algorithm is trained to generate these new instances based upon smaller trained human labeled data sets, which makes it faster to deploy. And even though generative AI is, I think, still in its infancy, more and more industries, more and more applications, and more use cases will be explored moving into the future, and especially as more data volume and data sets are created. And this will help to provide a better foundation for generative AI to operate. If we look from, let's say, skill set requirements, and do organizations understand and demand for this already, I think you will be quite early if you start in this domain. It will be a hot domain, but it's not that demand is there yet. It's only there for a limited set of organizations who are very advanced with data, with AI developments, and therefore from, let's say, job perspective, it's nice, but it's something a little bit more into the future to take a benefit of. So that's, I think, why generative AI is the third trend that I wanted to raise today.
Okay, and let's quickly talk about data fabrics, which is a interesting emerging area, and we want to get to some Q&A if we can. I know that you have a hard stop at the bottom of the hour for us, and the top of the hour for our Indian audience. But can you tell us more about data fabrics and their application?
Yeah, data fabric is a concept which is already there for a long time. And if we look to some description from Gartner, for example, data fabric, they describe it as a design concept that serves as an integrated layer or fabric of data and connecting processes. That, let's say, the general description. But the data fabric uses continuous analytics over existing metadata to design and to deploy the data across their environment. So this improves data management by automating repetitive tasks. So a data fabric architecture requires a data management platform, and this data management platform integrates the data management capabilities of the data that's on premise, that's on the hybrid cloud, that's in your multi-cloud, and it facilitates a business data for your applications, for your automation, and for your analytics. So organizations, what we see is that they are experiencing data integration challenges, and as more databases are added, data integration becomes more difficult, and data is often disparate across all different kinds of locations, different clouds, different vendors, different partners, And we see there's also, let's say, an increasing regulatory requirements and compliance policies pertaining to the data, and organizations need to integrate and derive the meaning from the data. And data fabric is then the architecture that addresses the challenges in the different data landscape and help them to orchestrate the data across these distributed environments so that the data is instantly available for the different business purposes. And this creates then this unified view of your customer, of your business data, so business can better manage their data from a general perspective. And there are several benefits of such a data fabric. It helps you to protect your data by automating your governance in the data platform, by using this metadata to enforce the data access policies, for example, which is also part of your security. The data fabrics also, it facilitates the use of self-service, and it democratizes basically your data in your organization. So all the different, which are now maybe departments or roles, can access the data and can use the data and make it work for your organization instead of having it stored on a separate location. And to answer more about the data integration challenge side of the question, Data Fabric helps to bring about this automated data integration so that organizations aren't spending a lot of time in manually integrating data. And data integration has been a challenge, let's say, for the past 25 years, and Data Fabric really helps in getting that act together. And also keep in mind that organizations aren't yet there to realizing the full potential of the data fabric. Many organizations are just implementing it, working on it. And for many organizations, they are still in their infancy in really deploying the data fabric. So it helps organizations in their digital transformation, and it helps them to continuously exploring new technology and new ways to use their data. And the data fabric, I think, is the solution to create this robust data architecture that integrates the layers across the applications, the autonomous database, and the cloud infrastructure. And I think it's really the next stage of data management. Data management is still the foundation for everything what you do with data and AI and machine learning. So much time is spent during this digital transformation on these aspects of the data integration. From, let's say, the people in the webcast, from job perspective, this is an area which will never disappear. It's critical, and the reason why it's critical, it's the foundation of everything what you do with your data. So if you focus on the let's say the processes and the improvement of your data in a data fabric, it will help, and you will get the job, I think, easily if you have experience in this area, because this is a need for every organization that uses data. And that means that whatever industry you are, this domain has value for your career. So I think it leaves some time for questions now, and I think you have also a poll.
We have so many questions. We'll do the poll after the questions and answers.
Okay.
But in the meantime, let's get to a few of the questions. One of them, there's several people who are curious to know if AI is going to displace jobs. And as just to comment what you were saying about data fabrics as an example, AI seems to be expanding the possibilities rather than taking away existing work.
It's two things. On one hand, you have to think, okay, what are humans? Humans are creative, and they can think not in algorithms. So think about what you're good at. And if we look to AI, the current status is it's replacing activities, but these are activities which are a lot of repetitive type of activities. So if we look to humans are great in creativity. Yes, AI will replace certain tasks, and that will, let's say, go faster and faster. And therefore, as a human, you need to think more and more, okay, what's my strength? What can I do different? I'm creative, so how can I use AI to augment my skills so I can be more productive and deliver faster results? So this is a key reason, I think, why you need to stay up to date in all the developments in data, in analytics and AI, is to understand what's the level of what can be automated, what's the level, how you can be supported in your job task by AI, and how can you do your job better. So if you want to survive, keep in mind what AI can help you with and start using it, and use it for your benefit instead of seeing it as a threat that it will replace certain tasks from you. If we look back to the Industrial Revolution, it was also replacing tasks that people were doing. This is happening now as well, but at a faster pace. So you need to learn faster than what you ever done before. But yes, technology, whether we go 100 years back or 200 years back, what you called it technology at that moment, it was supporting jobs, or you can call it replacing job. I call it augmenting your job and being more productive.
Right. Clint is an InfoSec engineer, and he's curious to know where to find cybersecurity machine learning resources that are not just academic, things that are practical.
I don't want to promote my own new platform, but on Intelligent World, we share use cases and all kind of real business cases where AI machine learning is used. And so that's one of the source. But also, I think depending how technical or non-technical you would like to have it, if you are more the KD Nuggets and Data Science Central, they're more basically going to the technical part. If you look more to the business side, there's so many different areas. As I said, look first at Intelligent World, where you can really find education about it. And otherwise, I use a lot Twitter, and where you follow certain hashtags to stay up to date what's going on. It seems to be let's say a general source, but if you define your hashtags properly, I think you get the right use cases. And search on YouTube, where you can find the right use cases. And the third source, I think, is the technology vendors itself. They have a lot of educational programs where they share the use cases, what you can do with the technology, and they will launch every month, every quarter, new technology and the use cases related to that. So they're really willing to share it. If you subscribe to their webinars, you can educate yourself as well. The challenge, let's say, with subscribing to the vendors type of broadcast, there's quite some vendors. So which vendors to subscribe? But that's something where you need to define your specific area, your specific industry, and find the vendors that are in that area as well.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. We have several questions from people who are in related fields like computer architecture, electrical engineering, who are curious to know how to move into data science, what kind of path they can take, and whether this is a good opportunity, a good pivot for them.
Yeah, so if you, let's say, if you have a business focus and you are in a total different industry, I think the easiest is to start still as a data analyst or as a junior data scientist. And it sounds maybe strange if you have 10 or 15 years of experience and it feels like doing a step back, but maybe you can either do a course or have a side role next to your job and start to understanding what data is, what data can do for you, start using the data really from a business perspective, because that brings a lot of business value to your skills if you have industry expertise and if you understand how to analyze data. The other part, which is the good thing about all the analytics nowadays, is that it's more and more automated. So you can do quite advanced analysis without understanding the real foundation, how to do the analysis. It's always good to understand the foundation, but I can imagine if you don't want to dive into it and do a full either course or a master in it, start trying to find the applications within your organization. They are definitely there where you can start analyzing your data, start working with it. And the real value for each person who has industry knowledge is the combination. Is you can understand the industry, you can translate, let's say, what data can mean for your organization. If you are a data scientist without any industry knowledge, it's very hard to, one, understand the data, and the second part is to communicate what the data can do for your organization. So start with a smaller course, maybe Simplilearn as well, and from there, from your analytics expertise or your data science skills, move further. But yeah, keep your strengths, and your strength is the business knowledge.
Okay. I know that you have a hard stop now, and you're going to have to disappoint a number of the people who asked questions, but I will answer a couple of those. If you need to leave the webinar now, Ronald will understand. We'll get through the rest of it without you. So if that's the case, let me know.
Yeah, thanks a lot for everybody, and hope you enjoyed it, and looking forward to seeing you next time, and wish you all the best in 2022. It's a nice year ahead with a lot of developments, and look at from the bright side from all the opportunities it brings.
Thanks again, Ronald.
Thank you.
I'm going to go ahead and run the poll for this last question. And this poll asks what skills you would like to add to your personal toolkit. And for those skills, when would you like to start learning them? I'll keep the poll open for about another 20 seconds. Always like to say that best time to start is now, but see what you have to say about that in about 5 seconds. Yeah. Share the poll results here. So not surprising, 70% of you would like to do add data science skills, followed by AI and machine learning. And then some of people are interested in each of the other skills as well. And I know that there was a question about project management and opportunities, project management relating to emerging technologies. Simplilearn does actually have courses in both general project management skills, but also in things like management for digital transformation, that type of thing. So we have training programs available in all of these areas. And if I take a look at the answers about time, most people would like to get started soon. So that's a good thing to know. Let me switch over and finish the webinar for us. So we want to say thank you to Ronald, who had to leave, but I will give you his LinkedIn contact information, and you'll be able to reach out to him, follow or connect with him on LinkedIn, and he'll be able to help with some of those questions. And I'm putting that into the chat. All right. We do have general areas of data science and analytics courses ranging from single courses to comprehensive master's and postgraduate programs, some of which are in concert partnership with um, major universities. And so I'm putting these links into the chat as well. You can take a look at more information about the specific areas that interest you. And then lastly, I'd like to mention that we have a webinar coming up next Tuesday, December 21st, in the digital marketing area. It'll be similar to this one in that we will be talking about trends in digital marketing for 2022. So if you have an interest in that area, or if you know somebody who does, please share that link. And with that, I'd like to conclude the webinar. We remind you to connect with us on our social media channels, Simplilearn, at Simplilearn on Facebook and Twitter, or Simplilearn on LinkedIn. Got a number of questions about things like certificates and slides. We will be sharing the basic slide set, although it's very, very brief today, but we will share the 10 slides about the topic in a PDF format, and we will email you a link to a recording of the session, and we will link it will send you your proof of attendance certificate if you attended live on WebEx and were here for more than half of the webinar. We'll email you that proof of attendance over the weekend. So I want to reassure you about all those things. And thank you all again for being here at today's webinar. We hope it was informative, and we look forward to seeing you at future Simplilearn webinars and hope to welcome you into the Simplilearn learning community. Thank you so much.